Good afternoon or morning, students, depending on where you are or when you're listening. This is the last section we have on our Shark class at Shark Class 8. And in here, we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to talk a little bit about environmentally safe conditions to fish for fish and sharks. And then we're going to go shark fishing in the classroom, which is kind of an interesting one. Normally, we do this with students, but because this is kind of times that we have to be staying away from each other a little bit more due to COVID, we are actually going to use some teachers to go shark fishing in the classroom. But before we get to that section, there's a couple things we want to discuss. First, again, we had discussed safe fishing methods that long lining is much more preferable to fish commercially than our nets. And the reason we discussed that was that the nets get bycatch, catch things that we don't want to catch, where the long lines get the targeted species, and we don't catch things like turtles, whales, and other things that we don't want to catch. Now, when we go to shark fishing and we go to other kind of fishing, there's two basic types of hooks I want to show you. And um, one is, I think, a lot better. And I've fished a lot with both of them over my years. And the first hook is called a barbed hook. And the barbed hook looks like this. And as you can see, the barbed hook right in here has what's called a little barb. And it also has barbs here. Now, not all barbed hooks have barbs all the way down, but this barb is catches in the fish's mouth. So it actually grabs a hole like this and locks the fish so the hook can't come out. Now, one of the problems, the things that a lot of people would say is, well, if you don't use barbed hooks, the fish are going to get off. Well, I found that's not true. I've had as much success fishing with circle hooks that we're going to cover in a second as we do barbed hooks. Now, barbed hooks, the things I don't like is, for some reason, generally the fish swallow this hook deeper in their stomachs and in their gullet, and it gets hooked down deep, and it's much harder to get out. So if you catch a small rockfish, it's hard to get the rockfish out of the fish without hurting it, or an undersized halibut. And now, again, a lot of fish have acids in their stomach and will dissolve a hook over time, but smaller fish aren't going to dissolve it as quickly. Now, a circle hook, which looks like this, does not have a barb on it. There's nothing here that catches in the fish's mouth. And the other thing, for some reason, what I find is when you go to set this hook or actually put it into the shark, or excuse me, rockfish or halibut or whatever you want, for some reason, this generally rides up and catches, not all the time, but often it catches in their lip. So, and it generally stays in. It does not come out easily. It because the more you pull on this part, it goes into the fish. And this hook is much easier to get out of a fish later on down the road, to if you have to release them and don't want to hurt them. And the other thing is, it also winds up, if the line breaks or something else, the fish can get this out of its mouth a lot easier. Now, the last thing we're going to discuss before we actually get to the bigger rods and stuff is, we're going to talk a little about rockfish. Now, rockfish is one thing that generally a lot of people on the California coast catch, and generally rockfish hang out in rocks. And one thing bad is, when you hook a rockfish and you pull it to the surface, they have an air bladder. And the air bladder generally inflates. The air bladder regulates where the fish stays. It kind of enables the fish to stay close to the bottom, and then they can fill their air bladder a little bit if they want to go up and down. But when we take a fish and we haul it all the way to the surface, the air bladder inflates like a balloon, and it generally comes out of the rockfish's mouth. If we unhook the rockfish and throw it right back in, generally the rockfish cannot get the bladder back down, and it's like they have a big balloon in their mouth. And often they'll die. Generally, a seagull or something else will come. And what I found over the years I fished is you can do two things. You can take a hook like this, just take the hook itself and take it into the air bladder and just puncture it. Just pop it like a little balloon, and then you can push the air bladder, you can squeeze it and get the air out. And when you release the rockfish back, the rockfish can go down. There's also another tool that we have that looks like this. Now, this tool is something that we can use, and it's meant to take the fish and put this in the rockfish's gill. And in this, it goes in the gill, there's no barb or anything else on it. And we take this and let this down with the rockfish on it. And this will take the air bladder and it'll deflate it so that the rockfish then can get back and stay in the surface. And when you pull this, it unhooks from the rockfish and lets them go. So it's just safe fishing methods. We want to try to keep the supply of fish plentiful, so we do want to try to be careful as we can. Okay, now we're going to get up and we're going to talk a little bit more about fishing for sharks, okay? Okay, so a lot of different rods are used to fish for different kinds of fish. But most every type of rod has what's called a drag. Now, the drag enables a rod this size, which isn't that big, okay? It is pretty big, but it's not real big for, let's just say, a 500-pound Mako shark, okay? But this is 30-pound test line. So the question is, how can you catch a 500-pound shark on 30-pound test line? And the reason you can is because of a star drag. Now, if I had a piece of, if this line was hooked up and a big Mako shark went to swim away, it would easily snap this line. It'd break it like it was a little piece of thread. But what happens is this, which is on all rods, the star drag, in this case, it's called a star drag because it's actually, let me get a little closer so you can see it better, because it looks like a star. It actually looks like a little like a star. And as you back off the drag like this, it makes the line come out easier. So I can pull the line in. Now, if I release it more, it even comes out easier. Now, what happens is when you have a shark on, you can wind up taking this and starting to tighten it. And when the shark goes to break the line, it slips and he can't break it. And then all of a sudden the shark will swim further and further away. And as the shark gets tired, you can tighten the drag more and it'll wind up being harder to go out. And then as the shark really gets tired, you can wind up tightening it down more like this. And it is even harder to go out. Now, if I back up, you may be able to see this, but if I have the end of this line, the line will bend. I think we can see the rod. Let's see. Yeah. So as the line starts to bend and it goes to break, the line pulls out. It doesn't break. And as we tighten it up a little more, the more we tighten it, the more the rod is going to bend. It's going to bend more and more, but just as it's about to break, it pulls out. So this way the shark can't break the line or a big fish can't. Now on spinning rods, there's a little drag on the front that you can tighten right next to the spool. And when you ever pick up a rod and go to fish, you want to make sure that you can pull the line off of the reel so that the fish can't break it, okay? So now we're ready to start to fish shark fish in the classroom. Okay, students, we're up now and we're going to start doing shark fishing in the classroom, okay? And this is what's called a belly band. And this is what the rod goes in to hold it in place as the fisherman fishes. Now, Mrs. Kelly is going to wind up putting this on. Why don't you go ahead and do that, Miss Kelly? Okay. And then she's going to have a seat in the fighting chair. Okay. Let's. Okay. Can we start over again, please? I'm sorry. Let's go.